Welcome one and all to this week's episode of The Síle Show. We're joined today by this stunningly beautiful and totally amazing broadcaster, writer, poet and podcaster that is Meghann Scully. Meghann was born in Dublin, and after her parents separated, she, her brother Marcus and their mum moved to Spiddal, where they spent 5 formative years immersed in Gaeilge, an experience that quietly shaped her sense of identity and her very special relationship with our native tongue. Meghann has gone on to become a strong advocate for road safety education, speaking in schools about loss and, more importantly, its long-term, often invisible consequences. So we are going to chat today about grief that you can't outrun, about the wide-ranging media career that Meghann is involved in, including her work with MTV, broadcasting, journalism, freelancing across major sporting events, about travel, and about Meghann's own podcast, Meghann Meets. So, without further ado, Meghann, you are so welcome to The Síle Show.
Thank you so much. Tá sé go hála bhein seo néanach leat. It's just, well, the space is stunning and I just was really excited to meet you and to share this space with you.
Oh, well, right back at you. Bhí me really dúil go mór le seo. So Meghann, full circle moment. Here you are in Dublin with us. Well, County Dublin with us. You were born in Dublin.
Yes.
And you moved then with Mammy and your brother to Spiddal when you were 3, am I right?
I think it was around, so we were born in a place called Dundrum. I'm sure a lot of people know it now. It was what I would consider a small village back then. And I actually started my education in Dublin. So Mum, Dad, Marcus and I were in Dublin, and I think it was St. Tractas, and Marcus was 2.5 years older. So he had a few more years under his belt, and I was just in Nínan Bheoga, and my parents had separated, I think, around the time I was 3, and this then would have taken me up to about 5. And then all of a sudden my mother was like, we're moving, and we packed up our belongings, the 3 of us, and we arrived in a place called Spiddal, Chun Galway. So a big drastic change from Linwood, but when I look back now, obviously Irish is now playing such an important role in my life, and we spent 5 wonderful years living there in Ballaliam, which is the Boring before you get to the beach, and we were in school there and we had friends there, we still have friends there, and my mother and I call it our spiritual home. Because I think for the 5 years we were in Spiddal, it was just lovely. Like life there just seemed so idyllic and picturesque and peaceful and calm. And the people of Spiddal really looked after us and took us on as their own, because we effectively moved in as English speakers with not a word of Irish. But they really took us under their wing, and they still look after us. And then we moved to Ardrahan, which is in South Galway, where my mother is from. And by the time we moved there, I was 10 and I started my 3rd national school. So yeah, it was certainly a colourful childhood, an interesting childhood. I do look back at my childhood with a lot of fond memories, a lot of love, a lot of fun. But I've noticed in later years now, my 30s, I've had to kind of look back at maybe the more challenging aspects of my childhood and realise that maybe there were some parts of it that weren't as good as I thought. And I think sometimes I'm the kind of person that I look at the good in everyone and I look at the good in everything around me, and I sometimes bypass the bad, and I sometimes overlook bad behaviour because I always see the good in everyone and I kind of want to believe that there's good in everyone. So I've been working through a lot of kind of what I refer to as the wounds that were probably patched up wrong. So I've had to kind of get them back open without using any pain relief, and we've had to restitch them, and I'm working on some fresh wounds as well.
Oh, I understand. So attachment style being a huge part of your movement forward. Formative years being when you would decide, your body decides, you don't know, you're so young, but we all decide who we are in relationship to others, given those formative years and our experience. And mum and dad separating whilst you have a fabulous relationship with mum and had a fabulous relationship with your late and lovely dad that you love so much and were so close to, not least with the horses. Nonetheless, mum and dad separating is a disenfranchised grief until you do the work.
Yeah.
And you'll be repurposing that neural pathway for attachment onto another unknowingly until you do the work. So that's clearly what you're doing now, racing forward to have your basic emotional needs met whilst avoiding those core wounds until you can't.
Yeah. And that's it. And I think I have done a lot of work over the years. In fact, again, my mother was amazing. When we moved to Spiddal, she actually got Marcus and I into a therapist a child therapist. And I remember being in school, being like, I'm going to therapy, and sure, I hadn't a clue what I was doing. But I do remember fondly going in to see this lady and drawing pictures. And I can still remember being in that space with her. And I know at the time, I think it was more so probably for Marcus because he was that bit older. But I think I've always had a really healthy and open relationship when it comes to therapy. And over the years, I guess I've had to go back to it and I know when I feel myself falling, I sometimes know when I can pick myself up. And then I know when I maybe need that extra hand. And that's kind of, I guess, what I've been exploring in the last few months since I moved back up to Dublin, is just kind of getting myself right to the spot where I kind of really want to be. And it's funny because I always feel like there's certain times when I look back in my life, I got there and then suddenly something happens and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not done yet. There's still more work to do. But I think I'm very, as I mentioned, I'm quite open to it. And I love exploring my own head, I suppose, and why things happen. And it's been a really challenging but kind of exciting time as well, as I kind of, I guess, dig deep and see the patterns from my childhood maybe, and the aspects of my childhood that have come into my adulthood.
Yeah, it's really empowering to be able to see patterns, because when you can see patterns, you can begin to understand what has been unfolding unconsciously until you raise it from subconscious into conscious, lest it would rule your life. I think I'm borrowing from Jung here. And you might consider it fate. It's not at all. It is the belief system that you've decided, and that's in your subconscious mind, which is like an 80 million bit processor. Your conscious mind is only a 40-bit processor. So in the moments that matter, you are not going to be able to be in your wise owl brain. You're going to be pulling from the program.
Yeah.
And those programs don't serve you. They will have served you at a certain time. That's how they're there. They were like the compensation, or they were like the adaptive person you had to be at the time to get your needs met. But very often, those adaptations become the monsters that you have to rid from your world when you're older. They serve you until they don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Meghann, you had a really challenging experience in your mid-teens then, which probably formed the greatest part of that which you continue to work on now and will work on, I'm sure, for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And I know I said we moved to Spiddal, and then Dad at the time was living in Kildare, and a couple of years later we moved to Ardrahan, built a house on Granny's farm right beside it, which was brilliant, and it's where my mother is now. But my father was actually from Gort, which is, I think, 5 miles down the road, up the road, down the road actually. And he ended up moving back to Galway as well. So then he was living in over in Crahwell, which isn't far away either. So I do remember when I had now started in Seamount, which was my first secondary school. My brother was in Garbally in Ballinasloe, and he's a boarder. And Dad and I had the horses, and my mother had gone back as a mature student to university. So I remember probably when I was around 13, 14 years of age, I actually remember, I feel like I can even remember the day. And I kind of thought, oh wow, I said, life's going really good. My parents became really good friends. And it was actually, I think, really important for me and my brother to witness a good, healthy friendship between them. And I think from a very young age, I realised my parents were not meant to be together long term. And to watch them though as friends was really enjoyable because they got on great. And Dad spent an awful lot of time in our house in Ardrahan, and it was just really lovely dynamic. And when my mother had to study for exams, she'd go into Galway City for maybe a couple of weeks to get the head down, and Dad would move in with me, and you know, we just had a lovely kind of system going. And I'd say it probably obviously wasn't the most normal looking. I think sometimes friends probably used to come over for sleepovers, and it would be kind of like, your dad's always here. And I'm like, I know, it's like it's just how it works for us. And I think you often talk about blended families, or we see it nowadays in social media. And I think we were very much so a very unusual blended family, but it worked. It worked for us. And but that point came in my life where everything seemed to be going well. Like I was actually getting quite strong on the horses. I was doing well in school, as was Marcus. You know, a lot of things were just falling into place. And I kind of felt like we deserved it because we had, I suppose, with all the moving as children and, you know, splitting Christmas between our parents, having to spend holidays with Dad, and a lot of moving around and a lot of moving parts, it kind of was nice to feel grounded. And then life just said, do you know what? Maybe you're a little bit too settled here and a little bit too comfortable. And on the 5th of March 2005, we lost my brother Marcus tragically in a car accident. I was 15 and Marcus had just turned 18. He's a Valentine's Day baby. So he was actually 18 years and 18 days, and he didn't die instantly, but he died that night in the hospital. We did get to see him before he went to theatre, and obviously we got to see him afterwards after he'd passed. And that obviously changed life as we knew it. And I can still remember every moment of being in that A&E in Galway. I remember the people that were inside sitting with us. I remember the people that were just coming in for a random broken an arm and a leg and minor injuries, and knowing that my brother is inside in this room and like fighting for his life. And but still I didn't think he'd die, because every Sunday my mother and I would drop Marcus to Garbally and we come back home and we watch ER. So grew up watching ER, and in ER I always felt like they saved people no matter what. So maybe my naivety, I suppose, and my age and my youth thought that Marcus would survive, because he was so determined in life. He wanted to be a vet. He had even drawn out his dream home. He, was really popular. He had loads of great friends. I think the girls used to more so love coming to the house to get ready for discos at the weekends, because they knew Marcus would be there, and he was really popular with everyone. Like, everyone loved him and he loved everyone, and he was just a really infectious person. And he was also really studious and really determined and sporty and active, and just everything you could probably want in someone. That was Marcus. And also for me, he was hugely protective, which is something that's kind of popping up recently, is protection. And after my parents separated, Marcus could have only been 5 or 6, and he stood into that father role. Nobody asked him to, nobody expected him to, he just did it. And I know when Marcus was around, I was always safe, because he was just so protective of me, so caring, but always wanted right for me. And in some instances was very strict. Like, he made me study even when I didn't want to. I'd be like, it's just the junior cert, Marcus. And he was like, it doesn't matter, this sets you up for life. And I'd be like, oh. So I'd be there trying to turn on the television and trying to put on MTV, and Marcus come up the hall being like, turn that off. And he'd take the remote off me, and I'd be like, I just want to watch TV. He's like, no, you have to study. And he was just really diligent as well, and very careful. And he always did what was right for me. And I know everything that even when he was being strict, it was for my own benefit. So when I lost him, I not only lost my big brother and my best friend, the person I looked up to the most. I adored Marcus, and anyone that was in school with me at the time will tell you, like, I was obsessed with him. I just thought he was the best person ever. So when I lost him, I lost a piece of me, because suddenly my system was gone. Like, Marcus was always with me, and when our parents were breaking up, we had each other. And often we weren't perfect. We fought like brothers and sisters do, and my mother used to be like, and no one else fights like he. And we'd be like, no, they fight as well. And it's not just us. But, that was just the way we were. And yeah, I remember when he was gone, then I couldn't believe it, because I just thought, like, this couldn't be happening. And a lot of people who knew my father actually were ringing the house, because my father was sick for all my life. People were ringing going, has there been a mistake? Is it Maxie? And it's like, no, it's Marcus. And everyone's like, it couldn't be, like, because, Marcus has his whole life ahead of him. But it was, and that was reality. And, we had to go through the process and the funeral, and we laid him out in our house, and we've only a small house. So we had to actually remove doors, internal doors, to fit Marcus into the house. And, it was one of the most powerful funerals I've ever been to. And it was we just said, we have to make Marcus proud. And we gave him such a phenomenal send off. And I just remember being, though, in the church, and the Garbally students had all turned up, the whole lot of them, in their uniforms, and they all suddenly just came from every corner of the church, and they surrounded Marcus's coffin. It was the most incredible scene to witness, watching all these young boys crying surrounding their best friend, because they all looked up to him and they were all so fond of him. And I remember sitting in the chair and looking up going, I feel so sorry for them. This is so hard, what they're going through. They've lost, their brother and I think that's the way I've always been in my life. I always put my own emotions to the back, and I'm always so conscious of looking after those around me. And I suppose what the grief for Marcus was, I had to postpone it, I suppose, or leave it behind, because my mother was obviously devastated. I would never try take from mother's grief. Like, yourself, a mother's grief is the most horrendous, and I don't think anything can ever compare to a mother's loss of a child. And I could see that, and I knew that, and I understood that straight away. So I thought, right, I need to park my own tears, I need to park my own sadness, and I have to look after my mother. And in the meantime, I had my father, who I think couldn't believe that his son was taken, when he had, my father probably has looked death so many times, and I had, I suppose, been on his deathbed, but survived and pulled through, and always was a fighter and a really determined to live. And I think for Marcus to be taken in one foul swoop, just Dad couldn't understand it and couldn't come to grips with it. So I was trying to like build both my parents up, while also trying to sit my junior cert, while also trying to get on with school, while also trying to be a normal teenager. And I guess that was the real changing point in my life.
Yeah, Meghann, really feeling your pain. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I know that you do it. It's a very vulnerable moment, but you're taking it on as your strength because you're hoping to be an advocate for road safety as you do this. And you speak in schools, you have a public platform, and you have experience using your platform for the higher good. So whilst you had to you shelved your grief at that point, unknowingly, I think to a large extent, you probably needed a break, definitely, I'm sure, quite consciously for Mum and for Dad at the time, but I would imagine also because you needed a break. You were in that period of growth and expansion yourself, and going to UL at the time was probably an opportunity to park it, but not think for a second you could outrun it. Just for now, you were going to try and explore who you were. But the distance then, the gap was closed when you went back to Galway. You had to feel your pain. And in feeling your pain and finding your path, Pieta House, I think, were extremely helpful to you at that time. You went on then to do this restorative work, probably from the point of view of keeping his amazing memory alive, but also doing something then for the higher good.
Yeah, and I think the road safety was always, I guess, straight away, I think after the accident, I was always determined to actually drive before Marcus even did. I think my uncle had a field car at one point, and I was like, can I have it? And he was like, no. And I was like, I like, my mother can remember, I wanted to drive from when I was very young. And I think it was because I was such an outdoors kind of girl, and I loved the farm. I loved being outside in the farm. And I think I just was like, well, I want to drive, because I think my dream was probably at the time to drive the tractor. And I think could you get a tractor license at 16? With a car at 17. So I think I was always like, no, I'm going to be on the road. And Marcus never showed much interest in driving at all. So after his accident, then I said to my mother, I said, well, that's it now, because I want to be on the road. So to be fair to her, she got me lessons for my 17th birthday. Christmas, she insured me on her car. And that would have been leaving cert year. And by that summer, I was driving then on my own for the first time. And I think I got my own car just before I went to the University of Limerick. But I guess from sharing my story and being so open about, what happened to Marcus, I became a bit of a voice for road safety. And as you mentioned, I spoke in schools, and I had set up the a Meghann Scully road safety awareness campaign, just because I was like, I have to do something about this. But then life took me to London and my career took me away. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe running a road safety campaign isn't for me. And I think looking back now, it's because Marcus didn't really want me to be just in that space. I think he wanted me to do more with my own life. And it's interesting because I'm religious, I'm spiritual. I've been to mediums, I go to mass, I pray. And I remember one time going to a medium and she said, you have to start living your life. You're living the life of your brother and your father, and you need to start walking on your own. And I kind of thought, okay, but there was times I really needed to kind of use their loss and their death to keep me going, until eventually I got to a point where I could walk on my own 2 feet, and suddenly I could say to them, okay, now I can live my life. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do for the last couple of years, is make sure that I'm living for me and not for them, because they've lived and they've lost and they're here with me all the time. But I know that they want me to do what I want to do. Like, there's no point doing things that I think they want to do because it might not serve me. But the road safety then kind of started to happen. I suppose my name started to get out there, and there was newspaper interviews and campaigns with the Road Safety Authority. And I still work closely with them. I've been working with them in the last few electric picnics with them. They have these machines that you can do breath tests, which is great. But instead of drilling home road safety, we're creating like fun content to kind of, get the message across. And then I just kind of think I always speak openly about it. And I often get calls from radio stations saying, would you please come on and talk about this? And, I didn't want to always have to be the voice for road safety, but I understand that I have a voice, so I might as well use it. And, there'll probably come a point where there'll be another sister or brother who'll be asked to do the same. And, when that time comes, I'm happy to hand over the baton. But for now, as long as I'm needed, I will absolutely use my voice for the greater good.
Yeah, indeed. And what do you think we can do nowadays? What are the greatest problems? I mean, phones for sure, interface on modern cars, all of the distractions, but even eating. anything that takes your mind off the road. What are the more recent challenges really that you feel when you're speaking on behalf of road safety? What would you be advocating for?
Phones are a massive distraction because I think we're so addicted to our phones that we just cannot put them away, even for a short journey. You're going a couple of miles, your phone will buzz, or like that, the interface comes up to saying, someone sent you a message, and it's like, it's this kind of instant, I need to read it, I need to see it. And look, it happens to all of us. And I found this new thing that I've noticed when you're putting, we'll say, the directions for somewhere onto your interface, and then suddenly it pops up saying, speed camera ahead, is it still there? Police ahead, because it's obviously not in an Irish version. I think that's hugely distracting. And I'm the kind of person that if there's a speed camera up above, we shouldn't be warning people about a speed camera, because if you're speeding, you should get caught. Because if you get caught, hopefully you'll learn a lesson and not speed again. And I find there's these pages on social media and people go, oh, FYI, there's a speed camera here. And I'm like, stop telling people. The whole point of them is to catch people out. And I just think, there's also, I think our minds are so full that we're no longer mindful when we're in behind the wheel. I find nowadays people seem to use the car or a journey to think about things or to
catch up on their correspondence.
Yes, and not actually focus on the road. And it's just little tips. Like sometimes I'm driving along and I'm like, what can I see around me? So it's like, I'll notice, what do I notice on the road? And then I realise I'm paying attention. But often, like so many times you can drive home, and they always say the last few miles close to home, you won't remember the drive because it's like such second nature to you. And, we all know where the speed bump, or that's like the potholes are. We know where there's like a little kind of something in the road, and it's like we just know the surface as well so well. But I think we just need to kind of start learning to pay attention when we get in behind the wheel and just focus more. And obviously drink driving has been huge, and I feel like it's on the rise, which is really, it's so scary. But I feel like the message of drink driving isn't as strong as it used to be, as in to not drink drive. I feel like growing up, it was like, oh, you do not do that. Yeah. But like nowadays there seems to be this almost irresponsibility, or I don't know if it's kind of like I can drink 10 pints and I'm fine kind of an attitude that people think if they have 3 or 4 pints that they're grand. And it's like, just because you think you're grand doesn't mean you are. And I just would love to see more breathalyzers out in the road and more guards being out there. And like, I think we all know someone who does it, and I'd love to be able to just get more people to get caught. And I know, look, getting off the road it's very hard. You're 6 months off the road, but like if you're not going to learn your lesson, I just think we need to have tougher laws.
Consequences are important in every aspect.
Absolutely.
Of life, and safe consequences in some cases. For example, if if your parent is thinking that it's okay for them to have 1 or 2 drinks and just, bounce down the back roads home, monkey see, monkey do. You're very likely, not thinking you're offending, to do the same because they've always got away with it. But it's probably, more or less like a moral call that we're looking for, because there's a moral injury happening even if you haven't had an accident, by being the person who is flashing the oncoming traffic to say there's a speed van, and or having the 1 or 2 pints and thinking, but it's all right, you're okay because you're okay to drive. You don't know the day or hour that 1 or 2 makes you also think you can check the WhatsApp that just came in. So what can we do, Meghann? What can we really suggest that's slightly different to before? Could we, in our conversation here, decide that we would love to up the ante on personal responsibility? We can't police that, and we can't, but it's like a spiritual call to make things different. Just asking people in this moment, please be different. Please do something differently to what you've always done before. And if you possibly can have any effect, even if it's only just that when the speed van is there, that you're not the one that flashes the next car, maybe we change that.
Absolutely. And I think as well, I think as well as a community as well, I think there's no harm in telling someone to slow down. If you're in a car and you think this person's driving a little bit too fast, or they do pick up their phone, don't be afraid to say it, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be involved in an accident as a passenger. And I think as well, parents have to really speak up to their children. If you're going to allow your son or daughter to get a car, and even if it's with their own money, because a lot of people say, oh, sure, they saved up themselves, and that's totally fine. Happy for them to do that. That's great. But are you like drilling it home to your parent, like to your child as a parent? Like my mother she was in the car with me, I'd say, for the first 6 months. And this was back in 2006, 7, when I didn't have to actually have my mother in the car. I didn't have to get lessons. So nowadays there's lessons in place. So it's changed. But my mother was like, no. And I remember one time I turned in the driveway and I took it a little bit too fast. And I remember she kind of raised her voice at me, and she never does that. And I thought, wow. And she was like, you have to slow down. And then she's like, don't ever do that again. And I haven't. And I still actually, I don't know, does she look out the window? But I still take that driveway slowly. Yeah. And she was like, you just don't know if you clip the wing mirror. And at the time it was her car. And she's like, it's my car. But I just think, parents as well have to, every so often, maybe get in beside your child and say, look, would you drop me down there? Could you give me a spin to the shop? And observe their driving. And don't be afraid to pull them up on it, because, it's like the numbers are there. The statistics are there. Every time I seem to turn on a radio station or look at a newspaper headline, there's another one killed on the road, another child, another daughter, and another son and parent. And it's so sad and so hard to see and to watch, because I know exactly what they're going to go through now for the rest of their lives. And I just don't want people to suffer the way we've suffered. And unfortunately it is the case, but I just think we all have to just take that little bit extra step in terms of road safety.
And zero tolerance if we possibly can. I know it's a very brave suggestion. I'm not the first to say it. You won't be the first to say it. But it really comes down to everybody's own sense of responsibility then as well, because we can suggest it. But what we're really hoping to do is get into the mind and the heart of the people who aren't thinking that they're going to be the one that'll have the accident, having the one or two. Because as long as anybody is having one or two and thinking that's okay, so is everybody, because nervous systems are linking. You'll always be in the company then of somebody in the pub who sees you having the one or two, who was going to have the 0, and then thought, oh sure, what the hell, I'll have one. Sure, I'm all right with one. Sure, I've just had my dinner. And all of the silly excuses, it's a mindset. You just get into the settings in your brain and you change them to zero tolerance. And then you're on a different channel. So on that channel, there's a no drink policy. And if you're even, in the vicinity of another channel where maybe one is okay, then you might have the one. But if you change the settings in your brain, if I change the settings on my phone pertaining to something, my phone is not going to remember to be a bit dubious about it. It's going to give me that as a rule. So I think in our conversation today, we could raise the bar that little bit and put it out to people to be responsible themselves, exercise their own responsibility. We can't police it, but maybe you mentioned your spirituality. Maybe if we suggest, well, we won't be policing it, or SA can't police it. But how about you hold space even with the fact that there's a higher power at play, and that all of the things that you do that are for the higher good come back to you in whatever way you need at any given time. If people do need to see the to and fro of it, consider it even from that perspective, that it's like an investment in the emotional bank account in the sky. I don't have this drink and I won't necessarily see the dividend, but I certainly won't see my capacity for living a good, happy, healthy life siphoned. It's a hard one to put out there, but you have to try and put it out differently, because if we always say it the way we always said it and the results are, as you say, still the same, we need to shake it up and do it differently. Do you think life experience stories are better in schools than videos and, anything that we can access and just roll off, perhaps even without human involvement?
Yeah, I've noticed even when I was in school, we often would get maybe guards or, someone in to do road safety talks. And I feel like we'd kind of chat, we'd hear them and we'd listen to them and they'd talk away. But I found when you'd hear a human interest story, it certainly did, the children would sit up and listen. And I found teenagers, they often kind of get a bit of rap for not paying attention and not listening. Any student that I stood up in front of and told my story to, you wouldn't hear a beep inside in the room, and they watched and they listened, and afterwards they all come up to me and said, that really stuck with me. And that's, I think, where you have to kind of invoke some kind of an emotion, because that'll stick with them memory wise. And I think that's what I kind of aim to always do, is that they'd just remember Marcus if they could, or think of me, or maybe when they get behind a wheel the next time, they'll kind of have that flashback of when I said something, and it is getting that story out there. But then it's kind of hard too, because we can only share so much. But as you mentioned, there is a personal responsibility. Like we're talking there about people who want to go to the pub or go for dinner and have 1 or 2 glasses with their meal. Maybe can you organise with the neighbour? Maybe you'll say to the neighbour, look, would you mind if you drop us down to the local this weekend, and then maybe next weekend we'll drop you down and collect you as well. Maybe create like a community system where someone will become the driver, the designated driver, and little things like that. And maybe get on to because I know there's an argument about rural Ireland and the pub is the only social outlet, but why don't you, if you're so worried about the social aspect of the community, maybe offer to drive that elderly farmer who doesn't drive anymore. Maybe why don't you turn around and say, look, what about I drop you down to the pub and I'll collect you after a few hours? or that person that, maybe likes to have their few drinks the weekend. What if someone else turn around and said, look, how would I drop you and collect you? Because I think when we're in a local pub or in any pub, we can see the drivers. We can see them in front of us having their drink or two and then suddenly getting up with the keys and they're driving home. It's like maybe as a community you come together and say, right, let's all kind of make a system in place or put some kind of a carpool system in place that we can look after each other. Maybe the youngster that's learning to drive and needs to get those few hours, is there something there that you can kind of get together? And I know there's kind of an issue around, I think, having someone who's been in your car, who's been drink driving, but is there something a community WhatsApp group you can build to say, look, I really want to go out this weekend. Can anyone drop me and collect me? Maybe that's something that can happen. And then therefore you're getting to know the people in your community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because quality connection is what people are craving. Particularly, as you said, rural Ireland really has to get a mention when we talk about this, because that probably was one of the spaces and places where there was a little bit of bandwidth given that seemed to scatter the good work that was being done, But as you say, it can, if it's a mindset, it's a mentality. If the mind of the community is set at not allowing that happen, then people are going to come up with very creative ways to do it better. Like, for example, a minibus. Yeah. Football teams are always, looking for, I won't say looking for a reason to get out and play a game, but, it would be a great fundraiser if we could decide here and now, after this conversation, all GAA clubs around the country are going to do something to raise funds to see that there's a minibus in the rural spaces where people can't get lifts to and from, so that for no fee or a very small fee, people can be taken to the pub and dropped home.
Yeah.
That would not be a big stretch. Or if the government could offer an incentive, if the minibus was for that reason, in terms of the VAT that we might have to pay on the purchase of the vehicle or whatever, there definitely are ways. And there has been money ring fenced so many times for betterment of the road safety plans and procedures. And I'm not suggesting it hasn't been used, but clearly if the results are still the same or worse, as you suggest, then it needs to be done differently. So we just have to keep going back and auditing. What are we doing? Because it can do no harm to get a look at what are we doing? Let's do it differently. Let's see where we gained and what we did before and how can we do it differently again. So what is your message in general? What is your big road safety message? I mean, I'm sure it's not just a general slow down, is it? And I'm sure it's not just don't drink and drive, don't engage with preferably, would you be suggesting even as you get into your car as a moral code, switch off your phone? Or if not switch off your phone, put it on do not disturb so that you're not getting the notifications, even though you might suggest, well, I'm not going to check them. But could we raise the bar a bit and decide, let's make it a moral code that we do not disturb like we do when we're going to sleep?
Maybe even set yourself a challenge. The next time you go for a spin in your car, just even figure out how many times do you go to touch your phone? How many times do you actually feel like you're picking up your phone? And just make a mental note of it. So when you get out of your car, you might be like, 6 times I actually went to pick up my phone or look at my phone. And then I think when you realise how much you do something, you're kind of going, and sometimes it's a habit. I find sometimes I pick up my phone, I don't even know why I pick it up, and I'm going, and not I'm saying like in just general day to day, and I'm like, oh, why did I don't know. It's just pure habit now, finding it and picking it up. So maybe it's a way to change the habit. Can you just maybe take note? Or if you're a passenger in a car someday with someone, try count how many times they either look at their phone, tap the screen, or don't pay attention, and just say it back to them. I guarantee they won't believe it. They'll be like, what? No, I didn't. They probably won't even remember picking up their phone. And just maybe start with that and get that into your kind of thought process of, okay, habits are hard to change. They're easy to pick up. But they're hard to break. So maybe that could be some way of just trying something different.
Yeah, and working together, not in any judgmental way, but as you say, from here on in, sitting into a car, so grateful for the lift. Thank you so much. I've just put Archangel Michael on each wing there now just to take us there safely. And by the way, you wouldn't mind just driving really safely, would you? I like to feel safe. Just the mention of that sometimes is enough to remind somebody, listen, you're not in rush hour traffic. So those habits that you talk about can be part of how somebody drives because they're busy getting to places. And then they forget, well, this is date night, or this is Sunday afternoon, or this is getting to work and I am on the last minute, but I'm better 20 minutes late in this life than 20 years early in the next. So just the mindset change. And I think giving yourself permission to sit into a car and feel strong enough in your own vulnerability to say, now I like to feel safe, so I'm not going to tell you your business, but I would prefer if you didn't use your phone. And loud music as well. How do you feel about loud music?
Oh, I have to turn off music or radio when I'm reversing. I just, it's so distracting. But it's what you mentioned there, and it's something I do pretty much all the time. When I get into the car, I say bubble. So I imagine a bubble around me. Imagine Marcus and Dad putting a bubble around me. Now I use that when this first started in my life when I lived in London in 2013. I used to walk all the time because I was pretty much broke, so I couldn't really afford to be always getting even the tube. So a lot of the times I would walk if I could. And I often would walk onto a street. And London's a huge city. And I'd just say Marcus, Dad, bubble. So I used to imagine and visualise Marcus and Dad either side of me walking down the street. And I never felt
safer.
I always felt safe in London. I never felt unsafe. And I think that's why I still have such a graw for London, because I always knew that they were protecting me. And I always think, when I'm in my car now, I know that they're protecting me. But I just don't know who else has put a bubble on their car coming against me. So it's just it's kind of part of your manifestation. It's a nice thing to do, I think, to get into your car and just say, bubble, protect me. And I'm so grateful to my car. And I always say how I'm grateful to my car because my car brings me from A to B. Now I know I'm the one driving the car, but I always thank my car for keeping me safe as well. And it's just those little tips and tricks that can kind of, I think, make you appreciate the road more as well and appreciate the car more, because I think an awful lot of people don't look after their cars either. And I'm going, that's a very strong machine right there. You should look after it. You should care for it. You should treat it like it's one of your friends or family member, and it will look after you.
Of course, so bringing on that lovely, gentle, subtle energy in your relationship with the car and to the car, so that you are in a space where you're aware of what you're doing as well, and aware of, as you say, the potentially murderous machine that you have between your hands at that time.
Absolutely.
So just bringing your gentle driving into your space every time consciously. So, Meghann, when you were learning those lessons at that stage, you had more lessons to learn. Yeah. As if it, it's amazing. The curriculum that was showing up for you hadn't even revealed itself fully.
No. So as I mentioned, my brother, after he died, my parents were just both so grief stricken. It was colossal. So I found I was kind of running from one to the other, trying to save them both effectively. And I just watched them. Well, we all got sick actually at the time. We were getting chest infections and kidney infections, and our whole immune systems were on the floor, which is totally part of the process. And it was just such an awful time. There was just dark clouds over all the houses, and my granny lives next door to us. My aunties and uncles are all close by. We're a really close community, and everyone kind of grew up where, all my aunts were quite young when my brother and I were born, so they were always with us, and they were minding us and taking care of us for a long time. So everyone was massively affected by the loss of Marcus, but we all really rallied around Mum and Dad. And then Dad just started to get unwell, and I could see him getting sicker and sicker, but he always pulled out of it, because I'm so used to my father getting sick but being okay, and getting sick being okay. And I remember the summer of 2006, his health was definitely declining faster. And the Christmas before that, we spent a good bit of that together. He brought me to my first ball. We went kind of together. And it was my first time, wearing a proper ball gown. I remember the trouble trying to find one because I was only 15 or so, and it was so hard to get one. And we'd done a lot of horse riding after my brother passed away, a lot of cross-country competitions, and we wore his rugby jerseys and we wore black bands in memory. So, we were bringing Marcus with us. And but then I said that summer came along, and Dad just wasn't really bouncing back. And actually, sorry if I bring it back again to March 5th, my brother's first anniversary. My dad was actually in hospital at this stage. But I was like, oh yeah, he'll sign himself out. Like, Dad used to sign himself out when he needed to. So I was like, he won't. Like the Dublin Horse Show every year, there was a few years Dad was actually in hospital up until the day before, and he'd still rock up. I was like, oh, you're back. And he's like, I wasn't going to miss the horse show. So Dad would never miss things. And I remember my aunt was reading out a Prayer of the Faithful, and she had 2 copies. One was, we want to pray for Maxie, who's in hospital and not well. And the second was, want to pray for Maxie, who's here with us, but he's not well. And the getting ticking closer and no sign of Dad. And then I was like, no, he'll definitely won't miss Marcus. It's Marcus's first anniversary. He will not miss it. And even when my aunt stood up, she looked up again and she took one last look, because even though we were obviously halfway through the sermon at this stage, she was like, he may still turn up. And we all thought, yeah, no, he will. And then after Mass came and went and no sign of Dad, and when he didn't turn up then that day, I thought, okay, something's not right here, because he wouldn't have missed his son's first anniversary, like no way. And then the summer came around and he just started to get worse and worse. And I remember being in school, and at this stage I moved to a new school after Marcus died. I moved to Gort, and again, Dad was like, if your grades drop at all, you're going straight back to Seamount. And Seamount was the convent and the girls' school. And I was like, no, I have to stay in the mixed school. So I kept my grades up and I was allowed to stay. So I'd just finished my 5th year, was it? But when he was sick, he'd ring me from hospital, and he was up here in hospital, and it was kind of hard for me to get to see him because he was all the way up here. And he'd ring me and he'd just be having a chat, and then that would be fine. And then a while later, he'd ring me again and he'd have another same chat. And I was like, oh, that's really strange. Why does Dad not remember just calling me? And then I didn't really understand what was going on, but I knew that he wasn't, couldn't remember the calls. And the teachers, they were so good. I'd be sitting in class. We weren't allowed phones in the class. Like, they weren't even allowed to be in the room. If they were seen in your pocket, the teacher would be like, give it to me. But they were aware of my dad being very unwell. So I'd be sitting there and I'd kind of feel the vibrations, and I'd look up and I'd just kind of go like this. Teacher would be like, go on. The teachers would let me out. And the whole class were so understanding. Everyone was like, no, she has to talk to her father. And I talked to him, and then this would happen a few times. And then the summer came around, and I remember meeting someone that knew my dad through the horses. And he was my age. And I said, I don't think Dad's well. He was like, oh, it's Maxie. Maxie always pulls through. And I was like, no, I don't think so this time. And then we got him back to Galway, which was great because I could see him. And I often used to go in most days to see him. And like that, I remember thinking, I was like, oh, something's not really right here. And I just kind of found the visits quite hard. And then he progressively got worse. And then it was coming up to the Dublin Horse Show. And as I said, my father never, ever missed the Dublin Horse Show. So we were even talking about going up, and then it was getting closer and closer. And I was kind of going, oh, the horse show. I kept kind of being like, the horse show, the horse show. And I was like, really was trying to pull him, because I was like, he has pulled himself out of so many health situations where he probably shouldn't have made it through. And I thought, he'll pull through this one again. I know he will. And I just couldn't believe when I could see him like effectively dying in front of me. And there was one last week then, and then suddenly I think someone said to me, I don't think you're going to go to the horse show this year. And I thought, no, we have to go to the horse show. Like, we have to. And then the week got ticked by closer, and it wasn't happening. And each day then Dad started to get worse and worse. And then suddenly he was, I suppose, sleeping more and, talking less. And I just remember his favourite thing was really strong tea, like super strong tea with 3 sugars, like drop of milk. It was the most awful tea ever. I don't know how he drank it, but he loved it so much. But he kind of taught me how to make tea from a very, very young age. And I then if we went to someone's house, he'd be like, Meghann will make it, because I could make his tea. So I used to go in and make his tea, and I get this. There was this like little sponge, and I'd put the sponge into the tea, and I'd try sponge feed him, because I was like, this is his favourite drink, and I was like, this will hopefully, And I was doing everything, and I suppose Marcus wasn't that long dead. And I remember thinking, like, I was 16 at this stage, and I, again, trying to save everyone. I remember I used to be kind of thinking, I was like, no, he'll survive. He'll pull through because he has to. Like, I lost Marcus. I was like, I can't lose my dad. And I remember like pleading, being like, please stay for me, like fight for me. And I kept kind of, when he couldn't fight for himself, I was like, fight for me. But he couldn't. And I guess the day came, and it was the 12th of August, and the horse show actually was on. So obviously we were in the hospital, so we didn't even get to see much of it. But his favourite competitions in the horse show were the Puissance, which is the high wall, and the Aga Khan Nations Cup. And he at 2:30 on the 12th of August, Dad took his final breath, which was between his two favourite competitions. So I think in that sense, I know that he did it his way, and Frank Sinatra My Way was his song and his funeral song. And he went during what was his favourite competition. But yeah, I was 16 years of age, and I just remember, like, when Dad had passed and we were still in the hospital, I just could not believe it, because I just was like, how could the two of them leave me? And then I think from that on, that's where a lot of abandonment issues have come in for me, because I think I've always had this kind of belief system that no man will stay with me or stay for me. And it's definitely something that's crept into relationships. And I think I had a lot of battles over the years with why didn't Marcus survive? Like, why didn't he fight? Why didn't Dad fight? Why didn't he fight for me? And then I think when I've been in relationships that haven't worked out, I kind of look back and go, why didn't you fight for me? Like, why did you not want to stay with me? Like, and I think there's been a lot of hard moments around feeling like that I'm not good enough, and that I'm not lovable, and that I'm not worth fighting for. So that's something I've been working on a lot lately, is I guess understanding that I didn't deserve what happened to me and I didn't deserve to lose them, but also accepting that I have lost them and that they're here with me spiritually now. And I feel that, and I talk to them a lot, and it's certainly been challenging. But equally, I probably wouldn't change my life now either, because it's made me who I am.
Of course, these adversities are always our learning opportunities, and the breakdown will happen just before the breakthrough every time. And it's a process, not a mandate. It's, we can't perform the repair. We just have to be with it, feel it, and heal it as we go by whatever means we have at the time. So there was a time, Meghann, when you reached out to Pieta House and they gave you at that time not a formula, but language that you needed to help you to understand what was going on, which I think, by the sounds of it, is kind of raising its head again for you as a learning point, part of your curriculum again, perhaps at the moment. Do you find that when you knew at that time you needed to reach out, and Pieta House were the place that you reached to, do you find that you're aware of that now again in your life, that you're feeling it's time to reach out again and put the supports in place again? Because they're never in place forever. There's something that we have to audit and address in terms of where we're at, what age we're at, what our circumstances are, what relationships we're in, what relationships we're giving ourselves to, and checking in with what we're getting back from our relationships.
Yeah, and I think Pieta House was that 2015? So we had over 10 years ago, and I was actually living in Dublin at the time, and I was working unpaid. I was probably at rock bottom. My media career just wasn't happening for me, and I was miserable. And I used to go home at the weekends miserable, and I used to dread the drive on Sunday back up to Dublin. So not only then was I in the depths of despair, I was also living in a place that I really didn't like. I really found Dublin so difficult, and I just was, probably now looking back, I had this mountain of grief that I really hadn't properly processed. And I remember then I was up here and I said, I have to go home. And I said to my mum, I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to come home. And I came home and I was not working. I was back living in my bedroom, and I just felt so defeated, deflated. I just felt useless, and I felt I was good for nothing. And I was just so miserable. And then I think it was my uncle, that said to my mother, there's this counsellor and he's over in Pieta House and he's meant to be brilliant. So my mother said, okay. So we got in the car one day and she drove me over to Tuam, where Pieta House had it was a fairly new space, I think, at the time. And from that day onwards, I started kind of a program with them. I think I was 12 weeks or so. And I had the most incredible therapist ever. And I found over the years, and it's quite interesting, that the therapists that I seem to really connect with are men my father's age, or else now I'm realising my brother's age. So it's interesting because obviously the lack of that male connection in my later years is the reason now I seem to connect with them. And he was amazing, and I was like, it was kind of session, I'd come out and I'd still be at rock bottom because I would be so upset. And I often used to stay back for tea and biscuits afterwards, and I'd drive home then. And it was just literally life-changing for me. And I remember then the day that I had to come to the end of my course, I was bawling, crying because I didn't want to leave him. And I was like, I don't want to leave you. And he said to me, no, he said, I've given you the tools now. He said, go and, use them. He said, you're well able. He said, if you really want, you can come back to me in 6 months, but it can't be for 6 months. So I remember being like, I'm definitely coming back in 6 months. But your 6 months came and went, and I actually suddenly, my life started to pick up and work started to pick up. And, I've taken so many valuable lessons from that time Pieta House with me, and I still carry them with me today. And, I have revisited therapy again, and I moved up to Dublin in August, and I'm back now with the therapist. And what I found about this time, I think back then I knew there was this loss of my brother, my father, this feeling of not being good enough, this feeling of being like useless and not being able to I actually physically couldn't work. I just genuinely wasn't able to get out of bed, and I was so depressed, and I had to work through all that. Whereas I guess this time around, I'm realising that there's some childhood trauma that I maybe still have to address. And also I think I didn't realise till recently about how much blame I hold on to. I blame myself for a lot of things. I suppose I blame myself for maybe, sometimes I think I blamed myself for the loss of my brother. I blame myself for the loss of my father. I blame myself for things in my life that actually were completely out of my control. I think I blame myself when I know that I'm actually not at fault at all, which is kind of harder. Like I even try to take blame for things and situations that I wasn't even in, because I think I've always been an empath and always been a protector of those around me, that I kind of think if someone is in my life and I feel like they're in trouble or they're suffering, I kind of want to take their pain off them, because I think, well, I've already suffered so much, so what's a bit more suffering or what's a bit more pain? So if I can take your pain off you, then I think I'd rather see you happier at my own expense. So that's kind of something I've had to be learning out lately, is that I can't fix everyone. I can't protect everyone, and I can't constantly blame myself for others and their doings. And that's kind of been probably actually a really hard lesson, to be honest. And having to realise that I can't constantly start pouring from my own cup to suit others.
And I suppose from the point of view of the attachment style that you're referencing, that's not a diagnosis or a disorder. That's just the attachment style you will use and employ until you do the work. So it's forever evolving as well when you're ready. It's always a readiness-led kind of emerging more than getting it right, because we're only just emerging. Nobody's ever arrived. By the time we arrived, our work is done and we're transitioning. We're on our way home, and we're all just walking each other home on that journey. So if you're feeling to some extent like you're trying to please people, that people pleaser state behaviour can become trait behaviour when we practice it often enough, because practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So whatever we're doing on repeat is forming the life that we're living in. If you tell me what you're doing on repeat right now, I'll tell you where your life will be in a year's time. Or if you tell me how you interact with people now, I'll tell you the relationships you'll be in a year's time. And it's really important to just hold space there and realise that we're probably in a protracted caterpillar moment, caterpillar stage, whether it's a day, a month, a year, a decade. But it is only the caterpillar moment, because the butterfly is ready in its own time to fly. And if we try and cut that open and free the butterfly will fall, it won't fly. So just holding space with that is really important, and realising that empaths are beautifully gentle people. They're full of essence. And there can come a time in our lives, you're right, when, because of our core fractures that we've shoved into our shadow and that we've not addressed yet, but we will address them when the time is right, we can go from being empathic to being codependent very easily. One can just slip into the other quite seamlessly, innocuously, invisibly. And that's where a therapist can really help, because the therapist can get that 30,000 foot view for you and help you to get into your own observing self and just watch. And just when you see it from the little bit of perspective and objectivity, you can see how you could do it differently. And you learn then how to put in boundaries really safely.
Yeah, that's something I think I've been trying to learn.
Yeah.
Or relearn as well, I suppose. There's a lot of, I suppose, learning and relearning and unlearning of a lot of patterns, and, I suppose the way that I go out in my life. And but then I think as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't change a thing either, because I suppose it's made me into who I am today. And I think a lot of what I've suffered in my personal life has benefited me in my professional life. I'm interviewing people, and I find that I think I can connect with them now on a deeper level. And I think maybe they might not even realise that I'm doing it, but I just know that that's kind of become my superpower now. And I kind of always try to look at the positives in life. As I mentioned, I moved to Spiddle, I learned Irish, I work at TG Carr now. And if it wasn't for my parents splitting up, that may never have happened. And I may never have spoken Irish.
Yeah.
So I always try to look at the positives of life. But I think, as you mentioned, sometimes now I need to sit with the negatives too, and look at the Pandora's box and see what has to be worked on. I think the inner child, I've been doing a lot of work with little Meghann lately, and I'm trying to remind her and let her know that she's now safe and she's protected, and that, I think maybe I've spent so long protecting myself, and I've kind of been, maybe I've had to let little Meghann know that she's also protected and safe. And I think sometimes I've been kind of fighting so hard to constantly protect myself. I feel like I've been in fight or flight for many, many years, trying to keep myself safe. And it's been hard to kind of let people in and let people maybe look after me as well. Because I think there's a bit of there's a fear of getting hurt as well. which again, inevitably has ended up happening. But I guess it's just all part of life and learning.
Holding space on that one for you and with you, and holding your heart in my hands. And I think we're all the same, Meghann. We all learn those lessons when the time is right, and not until the time is right. But for sure, when we are ready and we need the lesson, the teacher will always appear. And those triggers and those adversities are the teacher. And I know what I'm talking about. They are the tough pills to swallow, but they're sent definitely for us, not to harm us. They're sent for us so that we can come out of the caterpillar moment of that time and allow our butterfly to fly. And I'm so aware of the closing circle moment for you back up in Dublin now. And, you know, these things at the time feel so challenging, but they are getting us where we really need to go and where we can grow more.
Yes, absolutely. And Dublin was never the plan. As I mentioned, I was here over 10 years ago and I was deeply depressed, in the depths of grief, and I just didn't enjoy it at all. And I couldn't understand how so many people loved it up here, and all my friends have lived up here and now are all back in their hometowns with their boyfriends, husbands, children, houses. And then suddenly I come up to Dublin and all the girls are like, we've all like left Dublin and you've come up. And I said, I know, but I suppose it's my time. And as I said, it wasn't part of the plan. I lived in Limerick for 7.5 years. Limerick was my safe space, safe place. You mentioned the University of Limerick. When I went there, those 4 years were incredible, where I could be Meghann and I suddenly could just find out who I was. And I was no longer, I suppose, Mark's sister and Maxie's daughter, because I suppose that was very fresh at the time and everyone in the community and in Galway knew. So I guess I got to create my own persona in Limerick, and it was wonderful. And to be fair, that mountain of grief did leave me alone for a good bit of time. And then eventually towards the final year, I was like, oh, come on now, you need to start dealing with some of this. And it was during my master's in Galway that it kind of, I suppose, first caught up with me. And I suppose I spent so many years working on my grief and my loss. And then I ended up thankfully back in Limerick after a stint in London. And when I went back to Limerick, I thought, you know what, I loved Limerick when I was there, so I'm going to give it another go. And then that turned into 7.5 years. And I still hold Limerick so close to my heart. And often people say, oh, you're from Limerick. And I don't actually correct them. I go, yeah, because Limerick, the people are just so amazing, and they just took me under their wing and they really made me feel like their own. And I adored it there. And, you know, I think we spoke about it earlier, my apartment. I called it my apartment, and I suppose I should have known. I never owned it, so it was never mine. But after all that time, it was time to say goodbye. And I tried to find a new place in Limerick because, as I mentioned, I just loved it there. But I kind of also felt maybe this is an opportunity to do something else. I've been here a long time. I know everyone. I love everyone. But maybe it's time to challenge myself again. And that's something I seem to love doing. I love challenging myself in good ways and in bad. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to go traveling. So I took off to Africa, Australia, came home, had 2 weddings, and then took off to Vietnam and then come home again. And I was back in Ireland. It would have been kind of February 24. And I was back living in my home house. And because of all the grief I suffered in that bedroom, I feel like I had a bit of a broken relationship with where I was from. I love my family and I love being with my family. But I found that there was always this dark cloud when I was back in that house. And I thought, you know what? This is the time to repair that relationship and fall in love with where I'm from again. And I spent the next few months like going out for runs in the pitch and down the camogie pitch, where I learned the craft of camogie and made so many friends. And I began to build this kind of space and place that I really truly loved. I had fully become self-employed, so I could live at home and use that time to build up my freelance life. And that started to happen. I became healthier, happier. I just felt like I was on this higher level and I was growing and I was in a really good space. And I thought, you know what? Maybe it's time I can let someone else into my life that I can share my life with. And I've always been very aware of who I let into my life and into my energy and into my space. And I only ever want to let someone in when I'm at the top, because I feel like if I'm there, I can invite someone in that's also at that level. And I kind of thought if someone comes along, but I know you talk about manifestation loss on the show and law of attraction and everything. And I kind of had in my head of who I wanted and what I wanted. And I was very specific, like little things like I work evenings and weekends because I work in sport. And I thought I'd like someone that either works some similar hours or understands similar hours. I wanted someone who was big into food and, wanted to like try out all these restaurants with me and do all these, like go to these nice places. And I wanted someone who could cook because I don't really enjoy cooking. And I wanted someone that I could just, go away with and travel with and have fun with. And I feel like I kind of wanted someone that was like the male version of myself and had a lot of the same, I guess, principles and morals and goals in life. And I remember also thinking, am I setting the bar a bit too high now? And I just thought, no, Meghann, do not settle for anything less. And if this person exists and if they come along, great. And if they don't, I actually am very happy on my own as a single woman. Some of my best years have been on my own. So I thought I will happily spend the rest of my life on my own if that's the case. Lo and behold, in he comes. And he was everything I wanted and more. And it was just like click. And it wasn't that it was this explosive fireworks, that it was like, real highs. It just was like, yeah, this is it. And I never believed in the one. I know people talk about, when you know. And I was like, and then I'd meet someone going, is he the one? I don't know. I think he's the one right now though, but not the one. And I didn't know if it was just a saying. And I thought maybe like the one isn't for me. But very early on, I got it and it clicked. And I thought, oh my God, this is the one. This is the one. Is this the one? This is the one. And, very early on conversations happened about a future, marriage, children, dream home, businesses. Could we work together? How could we work together? And then also he worked in hospitality. He worked evenings and weekends. And we often had days off together during the week. And I was like, this is perfect. Like we could do things together. We could hang out together and go places. And it just was like incredible and everything I wanted and more. And then better still, he was from 5 minutes down the road from my home house. He was under my nose the whole time. And when we first met, we were kind of like connecting the dots. You wouldn't believe the amount of sliding door moments we had. We've been in each other's lives since we were actually very young. Pretty much in national school we worked out, but we never met. But we were always in so many of the same places. When I spent the year doing my master's in Galway, he was around Galway that time. We were at the same parties, we were at the same DJs, we were at the same events. I actually found a picture of him on my Facebook from when I was in college because I was the camera always out girl. So one day we sat down, went through all my Facebook albums, and lo and behold, there's a picture of him. And we were like, this is crazy. And we just couldn't believe it. So when we met, it felt like divine timing. It felt like life finally put us together for the right reasons. And I quickly moved in with him and we started, I guess, life. And it was just incredible. I literally could not believe it. But then I was very conscious of my friends meeting him early on. And my friends were all like, could not have picked better for you. Like they just were like, this is literally your person. It's like it's 2 year, like yin and yang. And we were like, yeah, and we just even living together. I'd never lived with someone before. And I think I was 34, 35 when we moved in together. And I was like, this is great. I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? This is brilliant. I was like, loved living with him and like really found that we had a really good dynamic of the jobs that I loved doing in the house, funny enough, were the ones he didn't like and vice versa. So it was great. It was like, yeah, you'll do the bins, great. I'll do the laundry, great. And then it just kind of felt like just easy. Yeah. And what I liked about it, I felt so grounded and I felt so safe. And I actually remember saying that to him at one point. I was like, you make me feel so safe. And for the first time in a long time, I felt protected because I feel like I've been protecting myself for so many years that to finally have a person that I really felt like I could completely trust and who could completely protect my heart felt incredible. And then I thought, wow, I was like, this has actually happened. Until it didn't, and it hasn't worked out, and I may never, fully understand why or what happened. But I gave my all to that relationship. I really did. And for me, it was about a team and working as a team. And I've always grown up with the mantra: fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And I have worked so hard at everything in my life, even things that sometimes like my friends laugh that I'm the competitive one. I go to a gym class and I treat it like it's a competition. I'm like, and not that I'm comparing myself to other people, but I'm like, how much can I push myself? How much can I push my body? How good can I like make this class? How much stronger? How much better can I be this week than I was last week? Can I put on more weights this week? And, I love challenging my body as well and my mind. And I just have always been a believer in, putting in the work. With my job, most of my job is researching and networking. What you see on camera and here on the radio is actually just the final product. You know yourself from sitting here. That's where the real work goes in. when it comes to playing sport, it's all about training and the warm up for me. That's more important than the actual game. So I guess that's the way I look at life, and even friendships. I work really hard at my friendships, and I have solid friendships, and I adore my friends, and I put time and effort into them, and they do to me. And with him, I put in time and effort, and I feel like I'm always been the cup is full or filled. This saying lately, like, my cup is now full, and I've always been a very much so cup full person. But it was like there was a hole in the bottom of the cup, and the water was coming out, and I couldn't understand why. And it was like, two people in a boat, and only one of us is actually using the oar and trying to get the boat going, and it's not going to work unless two people are working at it. And I don't really know what happened. And when it all fell apart, I thought, I was like, I can't let this break me. I've been at rock bottom too many times. I cannot let this be the end of me. My career was just on the up and up, and professionally life was going like this, but then personally it was kind of going like this. And I thought, I cannot throw this away. I nearly threw my career away that time when I ended up in PA House, and I said, I cannot do this again. I've worked so hard. I've put so much myself into my career and into my whole life that I just cannot let this break me. So I just literally rang a friend and I said, is there a room in that house in Dublin? And she said, let me check. Yeah. And I said, I'm on the way. I said, I'll come up. I did not want to live up here. I did not want to be in Dublin. I thought my life was in Galway. I thought my future was in Galway. Like, we talked about marriage and kids. And the funny thing about it was, I actually don't think I ever wanted children. I always thought that I kind of had to make peace with maybe never being a mother. And I remember having to sit my mother down to say, you'll never be a biological grandmother. So you have to be okay with that too, because I know she really wanted grandkids. And that was a really tough conversation to have. But she was like, look, whatever happens, if you don't want kids. And then suddenly when I met him, I thought, oh, actually, I could totally have a child with him. And I remember having these conversations with my mother. She's like, so do you want kids now? And I said, we've actually discussed it. And I thought, and I could see then she was so happy as well. And I thought, I actually think I could be a mother, and maybe that is something I could do. Not right now, it was a future thing. So obviously all that dream came apart, and I came up to Dublin, and I just thought, right, let's make this work this time, because you didn't like it 10 years ago. And Dublin has given me so much more than I ever expected. I actually cannot believe it. I'm absolutely loving it, and it's giving me so much more than I expected. It's bringing so many people into my life, and it's bringing so much past memories and past moments, and it's given me so much healing. And obviously, I mentioned the old wounds that are very hard to work with, and I'm not using any painkillers. We're literally opening them up and we're stitching them back together. And the work I'm doing is really, really challenging and really difficult and really emotional, but I am getting so much joy out of it because I know it's bringing me to better. I don't know what the future holds for me in terms of my love life or relationship or children or marriage. I'm not completely closed off though either. I'm not, shutting that down either, because who knows what's around the corner for me. But right now I'm just taking it as it comes. I'm enjoying my life. My work is plentiful. I'm getting to do work that I absolutely adore. I feel blessed. I feel lucky. I feel honoured. I have my health. I'm active. I'm sporty. I'm horse riding. And back in the saddle has been so rewarding and so therapeutic. And it's really saved me this time round. So I will just always be grateful for no matter what life throws at me, good and bad, because I think every, I suppose, bad part of my life, every hardship, heartache is bringing me to where I'm meant to be. Yeah.
What I'm hearing, Meghann, is that your arms are open wide to learn the lessons that these experiences, adversities as they are teaching you. And that's the only thing any of us can offer, because the universe has a plan. It does have us in its focus, knows what we need and is delivering, not so it would seem on occasions. Mm-hmm. But they're the times that we have to walk our talk. And I think by the sounds of it, you're doing exactly what you need to do. Where I used to always say to my children, wherever you be. And that's all we can do sometimes, just completely be. Because sometimes on the journey to being whole, there are holes that we fall into, and we fill those holes with even the person that we think is the right person. Because they look like on paper the right person, and because our attractor factor is where we think it's at. But then there's probably another level. There clearly is another level, or you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is just gently yielding to that, not knowing the answer. That space, that liminal space, a bit like the trapeze artist swinging so perfectly, and then the other trapeze is thrown out and you're down in the audience looking up, aghast, wondering, oh my goodness, how hard is it going to be to let go of that tight grip to catch the next one? And when will they let go of that tight grip? Because there's all of the opportunities. You continue flowing to it and from it and to it and from it, and it's coming to you and from you and to you and from, and eventually you fly. And in that liminal space, that's where you're at now. This is your creative space. So not to lose your faith at this moment when you're flying, because you're just about to grip that other trapeze. That's the creative space that the universe keeps offering us. Sounds to me like you're doing everything perfectly, and it is where it's meant to be. They're the hardest times, but they really are those times when it's too hard to stay tight in the bud, so we break open, and the breaking open is painful.
It is. And I think I guess it's all lessons in life. And as I said, like I'm kind of grateful for this journey and where it will take me. And yeah, the hard lessons have usually, I suppose they have brought me to better places as well. So I just have to trust the process and just see where it takes me. And I think just kind of live in the now and maybe I was kind of getting too excited for the future. And I think when I was thinking of the future, I was going, oh, this is like all going to happen. And then it didn't happen. And that's been from when I was a young child, like from when I said before Marcus died, I remember being really excited because we were all getting on so well. And then suddenly Marcus was taken and then Dad was taken. And then, I think now it's not that I'm afraid to get excited for the future, but I think I just have to learn to be really present and just kind of take it as it comes because, life does throw hard lessons at us. And I'm sure there'll be more that'll come my way. And, but I think it's how I pick myself back up. And I think this time around, I kind of hit the ground running when I got to Dublin, and it's been giving me back, I suppose what I need. And I don't know where my future is. I don't know if it's Dublin. I don't know if it's Galway. I don't know if it's Limerick. Maybe it's London. But I'm kind of open up to the wherever it'll bring me. I'm kind of going, you know what? I know it'll bring me to the right place. And if it brings me back home, it brings me back home. But I'm just not going to stress right now about it. I'm just trying to not get overwhelmed and keep myself grounded and do all the breathing and the meditations and the gratitude work and just be grateful for the lessons. Like as you said, like, yeah, there's hard lessons, but I am grateful for everything because it will bring me to where I'm meant to be.
For sure. And those cost-free protocols, meditation, gratitude practice, they really are your strength. To some people, they might sound woo-woo, but in my opinion, and clearly in your practice as well, they are literally what keep you grounded, because none of us know what's next. Nobody knows what's next. No. We only have the generous present moment. And if we get lost in the stuff of life, we're all constantly consuming. Everything around us is an opportunity and an invitation to consuming social media, consuming online shopping, consuming everything. And sometimes it's the contribution back, just giving the gratitude for the beautiful space that you're in is enough to just strike the balance at the moment. And then from a greater perspective, you don't know who your partner will be or where you'll be with that partner, but to flip that one then, but if you fall in love with yourself in the meantime, and it's such a gorgeous process. Love is the answer, and love of self and with self is really the red pill. I don't know if you ever watched The Matrix, but it's really that's where the answers are.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting journey actually the last few months, because I probably wouldn't have gotten back up to horse riding if I was still in Galway. Maybe I wouldn't have, signed up for lessons in Dublin, and I go every week now and I absolutely love it. And I think I've needed to get back to horse riding full time for quite a long time. And I don't know what stopped me. I don't really understand why I just didn't do it. It was like I was holding myself back. And if I still lived back in Galway, maybe I would never have done this. And maybe this is what I need to do. This is part of my healing journey. And the equine therapy aspect of it has been phenomenal, and it's been challenging. And I think people know from social media, it's been like, I forgot how challenging it can be in terms of muscles and pains. And I'm like, oh wow, I forgot how hard it is, and mentally. Yeah. But it's been an amazing journey and challenge. And I just, as I said, I'm just kind of excited to see where life takes me next, because I needed to get back in the saddle. I realise now that is probably the most important thing that I'm doing right now for myself. And I'm not doing it for my dad now, even though he was the one who taught me, was with me all the time, and was the one who was bringing me on with my horse riding and with my competitions. I'm doing it now because I want to do it, and I'm doing it now because it does honour him as well, but it actually honours who I am, and it's in my DNA, it's in my blood, and it's been hugely important to me. And I'm just so excited to see where that journey brings me, because I want to do a lot more of it, and I want to compete. And it's like 36 years of age and getting back into it. But I was like, it just shows that there's no kind of age limit on anything in life, and it's great to be able to just challenge myself and see where it takes me. And you know, I am sad obviously that relationship didn't work out, but you know, it didn't work out for a reason. And you know, it's not to mean that there isn't another one for me, and that won't happen with someone else. But I think it's probably just, I think it was just sad because I thought that was where life was meant to go, and it's, you know, that's just the way life is. And I think you just kind of learn that some things just aren't meant to be, and that's just the part of growing up. And yeah,
it is, and it is. You see, though, Meghann, as well, in fairness, because the grieving process, you know, you experienced as a very young girl a disenfranchised grief when Mommy and Daddy separated, and that was beautifully stitched up for you in their lovely relationship later. So it kind of, to some extent, it was a bit of a veil of what you might later have to experience. So there's a disenfranchised grieving in this as well. You know, I mean, yes, you'll cry, and yes, you'll feel it, and you'll feel the loss, but you mightn't feel as free to really express it as a grieving process. This because you've lost Marcus and you've lost Dad. So by comparison with that, there'll probably be an egoic part of you thinking, oh, you can't compare. They're not comparable things. But from the point of view of your inner child, they absolutely are, because they hurt in the same place.
They do. And I think it's just that feeling of, I suppose that was, I guess, the issues of the abandonment issues. And that's where I know that's stemmed up. And not just this relationship, I've had other relationships, and I kind of had issues of abandonment afterwards. And I just know that's something that I have to work on in myself. And that's what I'm doing. I'm working on myself because I'm trying to figure out, you know, the areas of my life that maybe weren't healed properly as for little Meghann. So that's what I'm doing now with her. I'm trying to show her that she wasn't abandoned, and that she is safe now, and she's protected, and that I you know, I'm walking her with me on this journey and making sure that she's happy as well. So that's been really actually interesting, going back to my little girl and kind of keeping little Meghann at bay, and like kind of going back with her and walking her back through those harder moments and keeping her with me as well. So that's actually been, I've actually enjoyed the work. As I said, it's been hard, it's been emotional. I found the last, I think 2-3 weeks, I've been very emotional, which I'm not usually a crier, but I've obviously been upset here. But I was in the sauna the other day, sitting in the sauna, and I was on my own. I started crying. And I was sitting there going, I hope nobody comes in. I was dripping in sweat from the sauna, and then I was dripping down my eyes, and I don't even know what triggered it. I don't even know what set it off, but I just found that I think I'm going through a lot with the therapy sessions and with the equine therapy and with all the inner work, that I think I am releasing a lot. And I think I always say, you know, everything has to get worse before it gets better. So I think at the moment I'm going through the worst part where I'm letting go of a lot. And that has been transformative. And I know it's all for the greater good and for the better, I suppose, avenues of life it's going to bring me down. So in some senses, I'm kind of excited to see where life takes me. I'm excited for the next year. It's the year of the horse. It's like the amount of people that have messaged me saying, it's your year. I was like, it's my year. This is actually a horse, the year of the horse. This was actually a 1990 year of the horse. So I'm really like positive now. And I know there'll be setbacks and there'll be more tears in the sauna, I'm sure. But I'm ready for it now, and I'm open to it, and I'm just kind of like ready to see what happens next. And it's like, will I be in Dublin this time next year? Will I be in Galway? Will I be? I said, where will I be? Who knows? Yeah. But I'm open to it, and I'm just ready to accept whatever comes my way.
I think that's the most important part: open to everything and attached to nothing, little bit by little bit, and that allows us then, like the year of the snake is closing, where we were closing the circles. And year of the horse coming in, running forward, embracing the joys of life. They're just processes. And we just, if we can just yield to them and allow that they're happening anyway. So if we can just remember, our nervous system is not looking for answers. Our nervous system is just looking for capacity. So that's probably why the tears are flowing, because you're actually in your breakthrough moment.
Yeah, that must be it, because I feel like everything's setting me off.
Yeah, it's a pattern match. You see, pattern match. Everything is really in the feeling state. Very little is in the neocortex, really. The understanding of it, the academics of it, are a tiny part of the healing. Okay. The real healing is in the feeling state. So you could be sitting in a warm sauna, and the warmth and the cozy of that could very innocuously remind you of the warmth and cozy of a lovely fireside evening with somebody that you thought you'd spend your life with. Turns out honeymoon period wasn't honeymoon effect. And there's a big difference. And your subconscious mind will play that like a mind movie. And in that moment, bring on the tears, because you don't have the chance. Perhaps it's nanoseconds in the thought, the feeling, and then the response in your body. But as we get better and as we strengthen our nervous system and work on our inner child, I mean, that is really the catalyst, that's the elixir. And we are rewiring our brain for attachment then, because attachment is literally just an attachment style in the moment until we do the work. And really, whatever you want, I want, anybody wants to match onto in a job, in an environment that they want to live in a partner, friend groups, behaviours that they practice. So whether it's Pilates or Peroni, they're all behaviours. And however we show up to our relationship with those behaviours, practices, people, circumstance is really an inside out cleansing job. The happier and healthier and more wholesome we are inside out, that's our joy, then the more we can manage happy, which is outside in as it comes in, because that can be a little bit of a false economy. That dopamine high, when there's a big inflection of dopamine, what goes up has to come down.
Yeah.
And then it can go below the set point. So it's about, I think you're in that period of healing. It sounds to me like you're in that period of healing. Pain body is challenged by these stories. But over a while, your therapist will work with you on all of this as well, I'm sure, to tell yourself a different story. And sometimes you can feel really dishonoured when somebody says that to you, because you know you've been in it. And it's almost like they're not believing the narrative that you've just come through. But it is actually where the healing begins, because everything is neutral. It's the story we attach to it that brings on the pain to whatever extent or turns on the healing. So what are your processes? You said you meditate and you practice gratitude. What else do you like to do?
I pray a lot. I have my favourite prayer. I talk to Marcus and Dad a lot. I meditate. I have oracle cards. I listen to music. I do sleep meditations. I love running, gym, exercise, horses, outdoors. It's like one time I was there and I can't remember, it was this a couple of years ago. I was like, I'm doing all the right things and I still feel awful. But I know now it's like, it's all just part of the journey. But I do actually think I'm quite good at looking after myself. But I suppose the issue I've had lately is the negative talk and actually kind of not being very nice to myself. I didn't even realise it until it was pointed out to me. So I've been working around speaking gentler to myself, and like literally I dropped something one day and I said, Dad, why'd you do that? And then I said, it's fine, just pick it up, it's an accident. So little things like that, and I didn't even realise. And now I'm kind of going right and working on, I suppose, releasing the belief system maybe that I did have, and working on that. But a lot of writing as well. Like writing's always been strong in my whole life, even from before anything happened. I feel like I was always a writer. I was always doodling and sketching. But they've all been huge for my life. But I'm actually, like, for the month of January, it's all been about meditating daily, aside from my usual night meditations. And it takes me out, because I'm actually quite an anxious person. I thought I kind of had control over it, but I've noticed actually the last while that I still am very anxious, and I've had to work on that. And it's interesting, the things I get anxious over. I get anxious over things that are completely out of my control. It's like, right, what can I control and what can I not control? So that's been kind of something that I've been trying to work through as well, and kind of sit with. So a lot of times lately I've been trying to sit in silence and see where my head is at and what's coming in and what's coming out. And I think maybe that's possibly as well what happens in the sauna, because I was sitting in silence. There was nobody to talk to. I talk to strangers all the time. So I was kind of sitting there on my own, and I was like, oh, there's nobody to talk to. I have no music on. Oh my God, I'm here on my own. And then I think that's when the thoughts were starting.
Self-talk. Your self-talk has a field day at your expense up there. Yes. And it has happened before you've got a chance to grab a hold of it. And it's the inner critic invariably is holding the meeting with the town council, and you're like, hello, you. Yeah, of course. But what you're doing then, interrupting it, allowing the tears to flow. And that can be the moment then when you turn it around. It's never too late to turn it around. But you've done some fabulous writing as well on the subject. So you're obviously a journaler, and then you've taken your diary into your beautiful 2 books, your COVID creation and your pre-COVID creation, discussing grief and the grief that you can't outrun. And will you be writing another book?
I think I'm always writing. I think I'll always be a writer. I just don't know what will come next. Although I've always had this kind of idea of writing like kind of a rom-com fun book on like just life in general, because I just think there's so many, like, not a biography, but there might be a few stories probably loosely based on, I've had some like mad fun, great moments, and my friends call them Meghannisms. like something happens, they're like, that is like, one of the girls goes, it's the Meghannism. Things happen to me, like really good things happen to me, really lucky things. I'm kind of like, some people often say you're very fluky, or something happens and everyone goes, oh, that's Meghann, like that, this stuff always happens. And like my friends often say when they're with me, something will happen. It's like, oh yeah, sure, that's like, it's because we're here with you. So in that sense, I always love that kind of, I've that kind of giddiness to life as well. So there's definitely a few books in me, when I'll get to do it, I don't know yet, but I'm always kind of writing. I'd say there's my laptop, my phone and notepads have just bits of scriptures everywhere. But I don't think I'll ever not be a writer.
Yeah, I'm the same. I understand. And you write poetry as well. You've poetry in your book. Yeah, I find it so healing. I find that poetry knocks on the door of my heart when I'm on the cusp of a change or when I need to see things differently. And it is, I personify poetry almost like literally a visitor to my heart to say, we probably should get some stuff on a page here. It could get a bit rough. And when I've penned it, it's like the picture forms and I can see things more clearly. So I say, Then when I see the thing coming, I recognize it. It's a lovely, I consider it my relationship with the other side as well. It's just Mother Nature coming in, picking me up before I fall, because I've tripped and fallen so many times and I've learned the same lessons. I clearly didn't learn them, but I was sent the same lessons so many times. So I've learned the hard way that when I'm ready with a lesson, to really put it down. Yeah. To absolutely be the competitive one, pass with flying colours, let the angels know. I've passed that one. Can you pass on the news, please? I don't need that one again. And I think writing is really helpful because it is the proverbial pen picture. You can see it so clearly.
And I think as well, because my brain is always so active and probably anxious, that when I do write it out and I read it back, it's suddenly not so bad. And it's kind of like what I think, because I am an overthinker and I always make mountains out of molehills for situations. And usually situations that are beyond my control, or sometimes I might think, I'm kind of thinking of scenarios in my head maybe that aren't even my scenarios. And then I'm making them into be this huge thing. And then I have to kind of sit back and go, right, let's actually write this down and see what comes out. And then when I write it down, I'm like, oh, actually that's, you're overreacting a little bit here. You're in fight or flight mode. So it's a good way just to calm the nervous system down and to really kind of make you sit back and kind of go, okay, right. Is this actually a big deal? Or is this your brain just trying to like trick you? Yeah. And then suddenly I'm like, it's actually not a big deal. Okay, we're safe. We're fine. Yeah. We can continue.
Perspective. It gives you that, because then when you write it down, when you take it from your head, and particularly if you allow your heart to feed the language that your head allows you to come down through your arm per se and out onto a page. I mean, it's a fantastic higher order capacity in the human space. And then you've got words on a page. So you're not in the problem, you're the observer of the problem. Mm-hmm. And that alone is just enough. It's quite settling because you have a little bit of control back. You're meeting that basic emotional need for control a bit more healthily then. You're not out of control, so not meeting the need for control. Meghann, we could talk forever. I find myself very emotional on occasions listening to you. I don't even want to go back to that now, or I'll be emotional as I thank you. So many parts of your story are just so relatable. I've read so much and I'm a big fan, and so relatable. I think you're absolutely amazing. May time expand for you, and may you continue to fall in love with you more and more and more. I don't know why you wouldn't. I'm looking at the most beautiful human being inside and out, having had that conversation. And it's not my job to say that whenever the time is right, one deserving person will arrive. That's between you and God. But if that's what is in your design plan for you, may it happen at the right time when you're ready for it and when somebody else is really deserving of it.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited to see where it takes me next. And it's just been amazing and wonderful to be here with you, and it's been so great to share the space with you as well, and it's wonderful here. And you said it right, that I feel so warm when I come in here, and I really do, and I just feel I actually could sit here for hours, but I know we have to probably finish. I know. But gur míle mágat.
Well, níl bhí sort the hashki. Namaste. Gur míle mágat. And there you have it. Meghann's journey teaches us that healing is an active, ongoing process. Our bodies and our minds are naturally resilient, capable of restoring balance when we create space, which sometimes requires decluttering externally, internally, and spiritually, thereby practicing strategies that support recovery and integrating the lessons that the adversities we experience are actually teaching us. It reminds us that moving forward isn't about forgetting or rushing grief. It's about allowing ourselves to heal at our own pace. Her story also reminds us that resilience is built through reflection, creative expression, physical discipline, mindful living, and the willingness to engage with both joy and challenge. And sometimes doing less helps us to achieve more, just allowing the body to heal the mind. And so, dear listeners, your task for this week is to carve out a little bit of time for yourself just to recalibrate, to refocus and to reset. Allow me, if you will, to guide you in a gentle visualization, a reality generator as such, that might just help you to access a deep, restorative state of mind and body. Let's manifest together. Let's create a mental mind movie of what you wish to cultivate in your life and feel it like you've already got it. I welcome you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. Find somewhere safe to sit down and settle down. You might find yourself supported in a chair. Maybe if you're in your parked car safely, resting in your driver's seat, maybe lying on your couch. You might also choose to practice this early in the morning, that space just between sleep and waking. As you pass through this portal, you're in theta space. That's the bridge between conscious and subconscious awareness, where the mind is especially receptive and very creative. So just slow down your breathing. Gently inhale for a count of 7 through your nostrils, not 7 seconds, just a count of 7. And a gentle, slow exhale, also through your nostrils, for a count of 11. This longer, slower exhale engages your parasympathetic nervous system. And that takes you gently into a sense of rest and digest. So just begin by bringing your attention to your body. Notice the points of contact between your body and the surface beneath you. Feel the weight of your body melting gently into that support. Scan your body from head to toe and just notice areas of tension and allow them to soften. Take a gentle inhale, just that gentle count of 7, and exhale slowly, preferably for that longer period of time, allowing you to engage the parasympathetic nervous system and signaling your body that it's safe to rest and restore. Feel your shoulders relax. Just create more space between your ears and your shoulders. Let your jaw soften. Imagine, if you will, velvet-covered coins just resting lightly on your closed eyes. And I welcome you now to close your third eye. Almost like gently unfolding a Roman blind so that all sensory awareness is offline, just in this moment. And with each exhale, imagine your amygdala calming, your stress response lowering, and your nervous system moving towards balance. This practice strengthens your ability to respond calmly under stress going forward and allows you to access clarity and focus more readily. Now bring to mind an intention, a goal, or a feeling that you wish to cultivate. Visualize it clearly in your mind's eye, as though watching a movie where you're already living that reality fully. Allow yourself to feel the emotions associated with this reality. Confidence, ease, joy, gratitude, and on-purpose alignment. Notice how your body responds to these feelings. Feel them circulating through your body with every breath. Trust that inhabiting this vibrational state primes your mind and body to recognize and attract opportunities, relationships, situationships that are aligned with your intention, easily and effortlessly. Attractor factor is real. Continue to breathe deeply, returning your focus to your breath whenever your mind wanders. Spend several minutes immersed in this visualization, feeling fully embodied in this elevated state. Where attention goes, energy flows. And if you're going off to sleep now, if it's that time of the day, just allow my voice to fade out and allow yourself to access through that theta space portal, the REM state, where fragments of this will come back to you. If you need to get on with your day, when you're ready, gently bring your awareness back to the present. Getting ready to open your eyes, getting ready to be in joy and carrying this vibration of alignment and openness with you into your day or evening. Whenever it feels right for you, I welcome you to get ready to open your eyes and to come back into the room that you're in, gently moving your toes in your shoes, moving your fingers, and slowly opening your eyes. Just a brief restorative moment from the inside out. Welcome back. And remember that your nervous system responds to your environment. From the rooms that we sit in, to the conversations we hold, and to the people who either tense or soften our bodies, our nervous system is listening to tone, energy, pace, and presence. So when we choose people who feel safe, and space is where our shoulder softens, we teach our body that it doesn't have to feel like it's in survival mode. So choosing safety in people and spaces isn't just an act of self-care. It's the foundation for calm, clarity, and connection. And so it is.